They said she died 2 days ago, but she was breathing. No one walks out of the morgue breathing. At exactly 3 a.m., while smoking my cigarette beside the refrigeration room at Jacksonville General Hospital's morgue, I heard a breath. Clear, close, alive. But everyone inside that room had been dead for days. I'd been working as an assistant in the morgue at Jacksonville General Hospital, Tomarauer, North Florida, for a year and a half. I'm 29 years old. My name is Maimisei. In an Koyo Kol Manhon. I was never afraid of the dead, but I've always feared the living. Until that day, when that logic completely collapsed. I was on the night shift alone, which wasn't unusual, but that night specifically, I received 3 bodies from unrelated incidents. Only one of them had no identification. A woman in her late 30s, white, her features distorted, like she left this world screaming. The coroner wrote in the report, Sei, cause of death, severe internal bleeding after a fall from a high place. Estimated time of death, 2 days ago. I placed her body in refrigerator number 4 and logged her as unidentified. Usually, I turn on an old radio station to drown out the suffocating silence of the morgue. But that night, I didn't. The air felt heavy despite the cold. I felt like something invisible was moving in the shadows. At 3:12 a.m., I was sitting on the wooden chair beside the cold chambers, going through some files, when I heard the first sound. A long inhale, followed by a deep exhale. It seemed to come from inside the refrigeration room. My hand froze mid-paperwork. I fixed my eyes on the small steel door and didn't move. The sound came again, louder this time. Someone was breathing, slowly, deeply. I jumped up and started opening the fridge doors one by one. Number 1, a man in his 70s, died of lung cancer. Still. Number 2, a young black man, gunshot victim. Still. Number 3, empty. Number 4, the unidentified woman. Her eyes were open. I thought I was imagining things. I slowly opened the fridge. She wasn't just a corpse. She was staring at me, not moving, but her eyes didn't blink. I leaned in closer, put my finger near her nose. She was breathing. I couldn't be mistaken. I screamed and called the resident doctor, but Tersiminkains. Sheinsti, Bapomchwe miss, Sulsasmation seer. Sobsrisnin a far wing. No response. I tried reaching internal emergency, but the intercom was dead. I went back to her. My throat went dry. I grabbed her hand. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply couldn't. Her hand was ice cold, but her fingers were moving. Slowly, with the weight of death, but they were moving. She looked at me, then opened her mouth and whispered something unintelligible, as if trying to speak, but there wasn't enough air in her lungs. My face was just centimeters from hers. This wasn't a hallucination. This was a living woman. But then why did the doctor write that she had been dead for 2 days? Was it a mistake? Or was there something deeper and far more horrifying? I grabbed the cordless phone and ran toward the outer office. I dialed the internal emergency number. No answer. The hallway lights began to flicker, as if the generator was failing. The morgue was located beneath the main building, a nearly abandoned place at night, which made everything feel even more isolated and terrifying. I rushed back to her. She was still in the fridge, a breathing corpse. I leaned in and whispered, "Who are you?" She opened her mouth and said something in a very faint, weak voice, but I heard it clearly. "He isn't dead." I stepped back 2 paces. "Who He. And how did she know me? I tried to stay calm. I thought of moving her to the emergency wing. I grabbed the gurney used for transporting bodies and pulled out drawer number 4. I placed her body on it. As I began pushing the cart toward the elevator, I heard a muffled noise coming from one of the other drawers. A soft knock, like someone tapping from the inside. I turned slowly. My feet froze in place. The sound came from refrigerator number 3, which had been empty minutes ago. I leaned my ear close. Knock. Twice this time. Then, breathing. I rushed back to the woman, whispering nervously, who was in drawer 3. But she closed her eyes again, as if her energy had completely run out. I tried pulling her away, but the elevator wasn't working. Its lights were off. The button was unresponsive. There were no stairs leading directly from the basement to the emergency wing without a special key. I was trapped. With her. And with something else. At that moment, the temperature started rising. I felt an unnatural heat, like fire was blooming from the walls. Then, one by one, the fridge drawers started making noise, as if something inside was moving. But drawer number 3 was the loudest, and the closest. I stepped toward it, placed my hand on the handle, slowly pulled it open. It was empty, but inside, on the metallic wall, there were chi, words written in blood. Return her, before he wakes up. Then I heard the woman's voice behind me. Strong and terrifying, completely unfitting for her frail body. Her voice had changed. It was no longer weak or exhausted. It was sharp, like something else was speaking through her. I stood frozen, staring at her as she sat upright on the body gurney. No groaning, no pain. As if her dead body had returned to life, but inhabited by something else. Her eyes were wide open. The bluish tint had vanished from her lips, but she wasn't looking at me. She was staring straight at drawer number 3. Then she spoke, in a low voice, as if relaying a message that wasn't hers. If you don't return him, he'll take your place. My knees buckled. A shiver shot through my body. What did she mean? Who was he, and who was supposed to be returned? I took a step toward her, my voice trembling with anger. Who the hell are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted her hand and pointed toward the heavy metal door of the morgue. Then she whispered, He's here. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The door began to move. Slowly. No one touched it. No hand opened it. But it opened. Very slowly, as if wind, or some invisible force, was pushing it. And through the narrow opening I saw a shadow. Tall. Motionless. Faceless. Just a black shape, almost like a hole in reality. It stood there, staring at us. My body froze, my heartbeat slowed. This wasn't fear. It was as if something inside me was being drained from my veins. Then I heard a voice in my head. Not through my ears, but directly inside my mind. You touched what should never be touched. I screamed, grabbed the woman by the arm and yanked her off the gurney. She didn't resist. We ran together toward the rear emergency exit, but it was chained shut. I didn't have the keys. Only the supervisor carried them. I turned to the shadow. It wasn't following us, but it hadn't moved. The woman started trembling in my arms. Blood trickled from her mouth, and her face returned to that lifeless pallor. But she whispered one last time. His name was Michael Bradshaw. Dead for 7 years. Never opened drawer number 3. I didn't understand anything. I rushed to the old records in the office and searched for the name Michael Bradshaw. I found a file dated 2017. a 34-year-old man who died under mysterious circumstances in a small town north of Jacksonville. The file said his body disappeared from the morgue 2 days after death. The case was closed under administrative negligence. But at the bottom of the report, the medical examiner had written one chilling sentence. The body wasn't cold when we received it. Suddenly, the lights came back on. The elevator powered up. I rushed in with the woman and rode to the upper floor. As soon as we arrived, her body began to seize. Doctors appeared and took her from my arms. I couldn't tell if she was alive, half dead, or something else entirely. But just before the elevator doors closed, I saw the shadow again, standing at the bottom of the stairwell, watching me, unmoving. I didn't sleep a second that night. The next morning, I returned to work early to speak with the supervisor, but he wasn't there. When I entered the morgue, I found the door wide open, and drawer number 3 open. Inside, there was no body, just a mirror, and in it, I saw myself, lying on a gurney, eyes wide open. All my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. How could I see myself lying inside a morgue freezer, while I was standing right in front of it? Had I lost my mind? Was this some kind of post-traumatic nightmare? I rushed toward the mirror mounted inside drawer number 3, but it wasn't reflective. It was an image. A still image of me. Yet there was one horrifying detail. In the image, I was breathing. I stumbled back and slammed the drawer shut, but then I noticed the room had changed. The walls were darker, the floor sticky, and the smell of burning flesh. I was still in the morgue, but not the one I knew. I ran toward the hallway leading to the elevator, only to find all the doors sealed shut, except one. A small gray door I had never seen before. It had no handle, and above it hung a rusted sign. Temporary holding sector. No entry without mortician clearance. There was no such thing as a mortician clearance, or at least I'd never heard of it during my entire time working here. Still, I approached. I touched the door. It opened effortlessly. The room behind it felt more like a shrine. Its walls were made of bones, and the lights dangled from rusty chains. In the center stood a cooked gurney, and on it, me. My body was lying there, naked, covered with a thin sheet, but I was breathing and crying. Then from the shadows emerged a tall man wearing a black medical coat. His face was hidden behind an old surgical mask, his hands stained with dry blood. He stepped forward and said, "You made a mistake, Ian. You weren't allowed to bring her back." I stuttered. "I didn't do anything. She breathed on her own." He leaned in until I could feel his warm breath on my face, then whispered, "Everyone who enters drawer number 3 never leaves the same." He grabbed my head with both hands. I screamed, tried to pull away, but the whole room began to spin. I woke up on a hospital bed in the ER. There was a doctor, a nurse, and a police officer. The doctor told me I'd been brought in after they found me unconscious beside the morgue drawer. I asked them about the woman, about drawer number 3, about the man in the black coat. But none of them understood what I was saying. The officer said, "There are cameras in the facility, Mr. Coleman, and no one entered the morgue that night, except you." Days later, I asked to review the footage. I watched myself walking into the morgue, opening drawers, talking to corpses, running, screaming, speaking to the wall, completely alone. In the moment, I thought I was with the woman. I was just standing in front of drawer number 4, staring into nothingness. I quit my job. I left Jacksonville, moved to Tallahassee. But every night, at exactly 3 a.m., I wake up to the sound of exhaling. And sometimes, I find the freezer door in my kitchen wide open. And inside it, myself.
The end. Or what the mind chooses to believe is the end.
My last night shift at the morgue. I didn't survive it mentally. I always believed the dead couldn't hurt anyone, until Friday came when I heard someone calling my name from inside a body bag. My name is Jeffrey Miller, 36 years old. I work as an assistant technician at the morgue of a Montgomery County hospital, Pennsylvania. There's nothing special about my life, just long night shifts, cold bodies, and endless reports. But that night was different. It was my final shift before transferring to a new job in Georgia. I clocked in at IMC 4. Everything was quiet, as usual in this rotting place. I received 3 new bodies from the ER, one of them an unidentified woman from a car crash on Highway 476. Her file was strange. No data, just a single scribbled line from the doctor. The body was alive upon arrival, but made no sound. Vague, nonsensical. But I wasn't in the mood to think. I placed her in cooler number 6 and shut the door. Then I got to finishing the last shift's paperwork, while an old radio played depressing hits from the 1950s. At 1:37 a.m., the lights suddenly went out. Power cut. But the emergency generator kicked in seconds later, like always. The problem was, the ventilation had stopped and the air was getting heavier. I had to leave the office and check the engine room. But just before I left, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in 9 years of working here. A voice calling me from inside the coolers. Jeff. My blood froze. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't my imagination. I slowly approached, scanning each metal door, until I reached number 6. A faint voice, like someone whispering my name from behind the door. Jeff. Open. I tried to stay rational. I convinced myself it might be coming from outside the room. Maybe the radio, maybe a hallucination, but I couldn't take it. I grabbed the handle and opened it. The body was still there, lying flat, wrapped in a translucent white bag, her eyes closed, but her lips were moving. I leaned in closer. I placed my hand on her chest. No pulse, no warmth, no movement. But her mouth, this time, clearly whispered, "They're not dead. No one here ever dies." Double asterisk. I stepped back. My heart was pounding out of my chest. Her lips were moving, but no sound, as if air couldn't pass through her throat. Only her lips, mouthing those chilling words. No one here ever dies. I slammed the fridge door shut and stood there, breathing heavily. Every cell in my body screamed, "Run!" But something inside me forced me to stay. That body was completely dead minutes ago. No pulse, no movement. Was it a hallucination? Work stress? A delusion? I went back to the office and took a deep breath. Poured a cold cup of coffee from a broken machine and opened my notebook, trying to write anything to prove what I was seeing was real. But my hand was shaking. Then, the coolers started making nadiang. Automatic opening and closing sounds. One after the other. The sound of metal slowly creaking open, then slamming shut, then opening again. I rushed into the hallway and opened the morgue door. All the fridge doors were closed. But on the floor, There were so wet footprints, starting at fridge number 6 and leading to the back door. I followed them until they disappeared. I told myself, enough. Someone's filming me for a prank. These cameras record everything. I went to the surveillance room, requested footage from 1:37 to 2:10 a.m. On the screen, I appeared, standing in front of cooler number 6, talking to it, opening it. Then, suddenly I started laughing loudly and dancing around it. My chest tightened. I didn't do that. I don't remember laughing. I didn't dance. I barely touched the cooler for a few seconds. But in the footage, I was dancing with the corpse. I bolted into the hallway, searching for anyone. But the hospital floor was completely empty. The morgue sits under the autopsy wing, an entire floor closed for renovations. I had no choice but to go back. The door was wide open, and in the middle of the room, the unidentified woman was standing upright. Yes, standing, facing me, wearing her burial shroud like an old wedding dress, and in her eyes, black tears. She said to me in a distorted voice, "You're the last one, Jeff. The others returned, but you didn't hear them." I replied, trembling, "Well, who are you?" She answered, "I'm the one who opened the door one night, and I've been here ever since." I wanted to run, but the ground beneath me suddenly shattered. I saw myself falling into a pit of corpses. Thousands of dead bodies, clinging to me, pulling me down, each one whispering my name. "Jeff, Jeff, don't leave us here." I woke up on the floor. The morgue was as it was. The body, back inside the cooler. But in my hand, I was holding a long black strand of hair. And it wasn't mine. 3 a.m. The lights flickered. The generator buzzed with a glitchy hum. I was sitting on the floor, hands trembling, one of my fingers bleeding, and in my palm, a strand of hair I couldn't explain. I stood up slowly. I no longer knew if I was dreaming or dying. Then, the sounds began. Footsteps in the halls, whispers, distant screams, and someone laughing. A raspy, sick kind of laugh, coming from the west wing of the basement, from the abandoned corridor behind the 4th room. The one the staff call the hallway that never ends. Something, a deadly kind of curiosity, pushed me to walk toward it. The corridor was lit by a faint red glow, its floor soaked with water from an unknown source. The air was heavy, and the smell was like corpses left in the sun for days. At the far end, a door stood slightly open. I approached. Inside, there was an autopsy table covered in a white sheet, and someone standing beside it, back turned to me. I said, with a shaky voice, "Who's there?" No response. I stepped closer. The hand holding the sheet started to lift it, slowly. Then suddenly, the person turned around, and the face was mine. I screamed and stumbled back, but the door behind me slammed shut. My doppelganger stepped toward me, but his body began to decay before my eyes, skin peeling off, bones cracking, yet he kept speaking in my voice. "You're not getting out, Jeff. This morgue knows you now." I shut my eyes, covered my ears, tried to resist. Then suddenly, silence. Everything vanished. I opened my eyes. I was in the form break room. The lights were steady. The clock read 3:54 a.m. No sign of anything. No trace of what had happened. I stepped out into the morgue. Everything was back to normal. Coolers shut, floor clean. The unidentified woman back in cooler number 6, unmoving. Had I lost my mind? Was it a hallucination? I didn't know. But when I returned to my desk, I found a folded note on the table, written in clear handwriting. You are one of them now. Then I remembered the cameras. I rushed to the surveillance room and played the recording from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. I saw myself removing the body from the cooler, then putting it back, twice, kissing her hand, then lying down. Inside. Cooler, number 6. But in reality, I never left my seat. I didn't do any of that. I swear. At 5 am. The morning shift arrived. The new assistant, Rick, walked in and said, "Congrats, man, last night's shift. How was it?" I looked at him, and in a quiet voice said, "Quiet, as always." But my eyes were fixed on cooler number 6, and I swear, I saw my own face smiling back at me from inside. I left the morgue at 6 in the morning, just as scheduled. The cold air outside didn't comfort me. It only made me shiver harder. I got into my car, glanced at the hospital through the side mirror. The small window above the morgue door was open, and in it, someone was watching me. It couldn't have been me. I had already left, but the person inside wore my face. Days passed. I moved to Georgia, working in an administrative department, far away from the dead. But something inside me never settled. Every time I looked in the mirror, I felt like those eyes weren't mine. At night, I'd hear a metal bell ring 3 times. The same bell used in the Pennsylvania morgue when cooler number 6 was opened. Hansumaus, one night in the white, I found a package at my apartment door. No sender's name. I opened it. Inside was the same white body bag that had covered the unidentified woman, and written across it in old dried blood, "Your turn isn't over." Sleep became impossible. The nightmares wouldn't stop. In every dream, I was back in the morgue, torn between corpses, while the other me sat on the autopsy table smiling, asking me to return. And every time I refused, I'd wake to the sound of a body drawer sliding open inside my head. One evening, I got a voice message from an unknown number. In the background, I heard the hum of cold storage equipment. Then a whisper. "Jeff, number 6 is waiting." I didn't reply. I turned off the phone, threw it out the window. But when I opened the fridge in my kitchen to grab a bottle of water, that same note was there. "You're one of them now." I went to a psychiatrist, told him everything. He didn't laugh. He didn't doubt me. He just said, "You're not the first case I've heard from Montgomery Morgue. You're the 3rd this year." I asked who came before me. He said, "A guy named Brian. He killed himself a week later, and a woman named Laura vanished." I left the clinic and got in my car. Halfway home, I heard a triple bell chime on the radio, but there was no radio. I'm writing this now because I feel like I'm about to disappear. Because I've started to hear someone else inside my body. Because I can no longer tell which version of me is real. The one outside, or the one still lying in cooler number 6. If you're reading this, and you work in a morgue, don't open cooler number 6. And don't answer any voice calling your name. Because the one calling you might be you.